Hello everyone. Finally, the moment is here. The doors to StorySutro are opening right here, right now on this YouTube channel. Dear watchers and listeners, I welcome you all to this auspicious curtain raiser and the very first episode of StorySutro, your world of spoken tales. We begin this journey with a short story titled The Tale of Shivgunj, which was written by me a few years ago and was fortunate to have been read to a wide acclaim and appreciation. As we go forward, here's a quick prologue about the story A Tale of Shivgunj. Shivgunj is a village in South Bengal, situated near the confluence of the rivers Damodar and Rupnarayan. The place is closely linked to fond memories of visiting there in my childhood. This narrative reminisces some of those memories and adds a few dashes of fiction to spin out this tale. Hope you will enjoy listening to it and will also subscribe to StorySutro by clicking the subscribe button and hitting the bell icon to receive all notifications of future episodes. So let the story unfold. The Tale of Shivgunj. The journey from Calcutta to Shivgunj was quite an arduous one. It had always been so. 30 years ago, when as a 10-year-old, I had visited there for the first time with my parents, the journey hadn't been any different. 3 decades later, the quaint village on the western bank of River Damodar seemed to have remained eclipsed from all the modernization and advancement of infrastructure the world had seen in between. I had suddenly chanced upon the memory of Shivgunj a few weeks ago, during a high-level official visit to the industrial zone in Falta. Standing on the neatly manicured banks of Damodar River, which flowed by the industrial zone, my gaze fell on the opposite bank. Suddenly I wondered, wasn't the village Shivgunj located somewhere out there? I recollected having seen the factory chimneys in Falta emitting smoke from the banks of the river Shivgunj many a time during my childhood visits. Only now, over 30 years later, I was on the opposite bank for a change. That rekindled nostalgia finally drove me to undertake a journey to Shivgunj on the very next available weekend, an idea I had toyed with many a time in the last few years. I decided to relive the hop, skip and jump route we used to take every time I visited there with my parents. So I took a bus from my home to the Howrah station, from where I boarded a local EMU train and got off at Bagnan station after a couple of hours. From there, my next crowded bus ride took me to the small town of Shampur, where I had to again change buses and board one for Shivgunj. The bus to Shivgunj still ran only twice a day as it used to years ago, and the crowd was no less even now. That evening bus to Shivgunj by which I reached dropped me off at its terminus, the Ganj Junction, a place I recall having loved to visit as a child. On many an evening, I would come here with Pintu and my maternal uncle, and as he would buy groceries and other household supplies from the meager shops around, Pintu and I would stroll around, taking in the sights and pulse of the evening bazaar which had collected there for a few hours before it grew too dark. That night, as I lay in a makeshift motel near the Ganj Junction, all my memories of Shivgunj came cascading back. My uncle, A distant cousin of my mother used to stay here, and it was to his house that we came during almost every winter vacation. However, my attraction lay in the neighboring house where Pintu stayed. Pintu's house was quite a palatial one to speak of. A 3-story mansion with long verandas overlooking a large courtyard which was mostly used for winnowing grain brought in from the fields every day. It was fun to sit on the veranda and watch the process of separating the grain from the chaff, and sometimes to play in the dust. Pintu's grandfather, an old man in his 70s at that time, used to oversee the entire agricultural activity that the family was engaged in. He walked with a slight slouch, going around the courtyard, checking the grain and the husks being stacked separately. The poultry farm and the cow shed were not far from the granaries, and I loved to watch the animals and the birds being tended to with so much care. As if exploring Pintu's large house and the adjoining courtyard, granary, and poultry sheds was not enough. On many a sunny and warm winter day, Pintu and I used to accompany his grandfather to the agricultural fields. I would be suddenly transported to a dreamland of nature, something I totally missed in my own urban settings back home in Calcutta. It was mostly on such trips to these fields, and also on warm afternoons on their veranda, we used to love listening to stories from Pintu's grandfather. Among the innumerable stories that he had told us, the one that probably touched me the most was about the jenny in the guava tree that stood at the far borders of the land that Pintu's family owned. It is about Dasharath, a middle-aged laborer who tilled the land in our farm many years ago, grandfather said. I had heard this story from my own grandfather when I was a child. We listened on intently as grandfather continued with the story on a lazy afternoon. My grandfather Sudarshan was considered to be the wisest in the village, and people revered and respected him very much. Our family owned a lot of land in this village and employed many villagers in the farms. So we were what you may call as erstwhile zamindars of the Shivgunj village. At that time, the river Damodar was known for its notoriety during every monsoon, and the villagers used to be in dread of it. The river would surge and swell so much that it would flood the banks, and much of our cropland, harvest, and even smaller houses in the village would be washed away. Sudarshan was disturbed with the river's havoc that affected his village every year and wanted to do something to stop it. That was when Dashrath came up with an idea one day, while Sudarshan was inspecting the fields with him in tow. Zamindar Babu, can we construct a big and strong wall on the banks of the river near our village, so that the river water does not flood our village even during the monsoon surge? Dashrath had naively asked Sudarshan, but his innocent question had set the Zamindar thinking. Over the next few months, Sudarshan led charge in this mission. He discussed the idea with the villagers and convinced them about the merit of building a strong dam along the river bank, which would be very wide at the base but not very tall, just enough to safely ensconce the village from the swelling river. This meant that many villagers who had their lands near the river bank would have to sacrifice extents of those so that the dam could be built. Once an unanimous consensus was reached, Sudarshan pooled in resources and commenced executing the plan. It took a few months to build the dam, and as soon as the monsoon arrived, the dam was almost ready. But for a small section which was still being constructed. The earthen wall sloped inwards to the village like a ramp, making it easy for the villagers to reach the top of the dam to view the river. The width of the dam was more than 100 feet, and later the villagers also constructed a non-metal road along the top of the dam. The dam certainly changed the face of the village Shivgunj, but the villagers were happy and safe. Pintu's grandfather paused to draw his breath as we listened on, completely mesmerized by this new story. However, that year, the monsoons came earlier than predicted. As the rain poured incessantly for days, the mighty Damodar began to swell. The villagers waited with bated breath as Dashrath hurried his men to complete the last patch of construction in the dam. That seemed to be the only weak spot in the dam, as very soon the swelling waters of the Damodar surged onto the new dam of Shivgunj and continued lashing relentlessly against it. Even in the hard downpour that night, none of the villagers stayed indoors. With Sudarshan in the forefront, the entire village assembled a few meters away from the inward slope, as if to lend their collective might, strength, and faith to their newly built savior. The battle went on till almost the wee hours of the morning, by when the rain subsided. As dawn broke, the villagers climbed up the ramp wall onto the dam, only to see the Damodar defeated and drawn back. The river had swelled and surged, but the mighty dam had saved Shivgunj from its onslaught. It was then that Sudarshan suddenly remembered that Dashrath was nowhere to be seen. The villagers ran towards the patch still under construction to look for Dashrath. The men who stood guard there reported that Dashrath was perched atop the bamboo structure that was being used for the construction, heralding the rise of the water, when the structure suddenly broke, being hit by a mighty wave, throwing poor Dashrath into the raging waters of the Damodar. He was sucked into the surging river and swept away instantly, giving his men no chance of rescuing him. The Damodar, though defeated, had extracted its pound of flesh. Grandfather paused again. Neither Pintu nor I knew that Shivgunj carried such a fantastic history. Well, the tale does not end here. Grandfather continued slowly, smiling and intriguing us even further. So what happened next? To know and hear the rest of the story, do join us for episode 2 on StorySutro, where we will continue reading the Tale of Shivgunj. But before you go, we'd love to hear from you. So do leave your thoughts and comments in the comment box for us. And if you have not yet subscribed to StorySutro, please hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to receive all notifications for future episodes. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe to StorySutro, your world of spoken tales. Thank you.